Let me just begin by thanking everyone who's assisted me in coming to this point. Students, past and present, some of whom I'm really happy to see are here today. Collaborators and co-authors, mentors, the supervisor of my own PhD, which I did actually not long ago, funders and people at UJ who formally and informally supported me, the Dean, Prof Marwala, and everyone else who I can't really mention by name. But getting here is really not an individual effort, but a collective effort. So thank you. Here in the few minutes which I have, I'm just going to really talk about why research chair in industrial development, and what are some of the, at least I think, interesting and important questions which we'll be exploring in our research program. So to begin with, one of the central questions which has actually preoccupied economists for several centuries is why do some countries grow so much faster than other countries? And if we look, for example, back to around 1960, we find a number of African countries, Ghana, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, and so on, having income per capita higher than South Korea at that time. Now, of course, the average person in South Korea has an income, well, depending on how you measure it, about 50 or even 100 times more than the average person in some of those African countries which I've just mentioned. So, of course, there's a number of complex factors which explain those widely divergent paths, conflict, institutions, and so on. But I think that part of the story is also around industrial development. So whereas South Korea and other East Asian countries industrialized, exported their manufactured goods all around the world, many African countries are still largely reliant on raw materials and with some sort of low productivity services sector. So I think this throws up a number of questions, not just academic research questions, but questions which have fundamental impact on people's lives. What sort of industrialization paths are possible and desirable for low and middle income African countries today, given that the context is very different from that facing East Asia half a century ago, and we can't just use a carbon copy. What sort of industrial policies are suitable? Where we do have success stories of African industrial development, whether firms, sectors, countries, what are the explanations for that success, where it can be found? Where we have countries which have already started deindustrializing at low levels of industrialization, what are the factors explaining that and how can that be turned around? So I think there's a whole set of really valuable research questions which we'll be exploring around that sort of theme. Other kinds of research questions which we're looking at are also in the services sector. So it's not only manufacturing which can act as an engine of growth, but what kinds of dynamic services activities can actually pull along growth and development. We're also interested in the impact of financialization, the shift towards the finance sector which we observe in many countries, and what are the implications of that for industrial development. And then a wider set of questions around, for example, the green economy and what are its implications for industrial development. Gender dimensions of industrial development, for example, in terms of wage gaps between men and women and gendered patterns of employment. Income distribution as it relates to industrial development. So does industrial development have an equalizing or a disequalizing impact on income distribution? And what are the kinds of factors which determine that impact on income distribution? And so on. So as you can see, we're certainly not short of research questions. And I mean, myself and some of my fantastic students, some of whom are here, are already working on these kinds of questions. And of course, we're under no illusions that the researchers of the chair will be producing definitive answers to these huge questions. But what we really do hope for is to make a significant impact, both academically and in the wider public policy discourse, in a way that actually, in the long run, will actually improve people's lives. Thank you.